Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddham dhammang sangham namasami. Dear friends, I want to give a special welcome to so many participants today. Ananaya, Damon, Dinhui, Elaine, Maureen, Paula, Ren, Richard, Sharanya, Sheila, Smita, Susan, Travis, and there's a new person who just found out about us somehow and has come in person, and they're taking their seat right now. And we have our own small community here at Dhammadharini. Just this afternoon, we had just the reason for our Sunday program to be organized as it is. Several families came together to give a special dana on behalf of a relative of theirs who passed away recently. And so the reason why the program is indoors just at the moment was because we had several families with their children enjoying friendly conversations, play and sunlight. So I couldn't get in my mind about giving a sutta class in the presence of children playing and having fun. That should be possible, I guess. Hello. Welcome. Glad you're here. Can you hear my voice all right? All right. The sutta that I've chosen for today is called the Subha Sutta, or sometimes called the Ananda Subha Sutta. And this is a teaching that was given not by the Buddha, but by his disciple, Venerable Ananda, and it was given several months after the Buddha's parinibbana, after the Buddha had passed away. So one of the reasons why it just struck me as being lovely to do at this time is that we are a couple of weeks after the end of the Vesak season. So we have been remembering and observing the Buddha's parinibbana, and now we will see what his disciple was able to remember. See, this was the great concern that people had in the world after the Buddha passed away, was how to preserve these teachings and keep alive the benefits that they had received from the Tathagata, the Blessed One, the great Sama Sambuddha, who realized so much for himself and had the skill and the blessing to be capable of teaching and seeing the capacity and the requirements for different kinds of individuals to teach them the Dhamma that would enable them to realize the opening of the Dhamma eye, or to realize greater noble accomplishments, even to realize the full enlightenment and the laying down of the burden of rebirth in samsara. So the world wanted to keep these alive, and they could remember that the Blessed One taught that after his passing away, that the Dhamma should be their light. If you have a book, this is number 10 in the long discourses of the Buddha. According to the commentary, this is not in the sutta, but in the commentary, for several months after the Buddha's passing, Mahakassapa, he was the monk who was the strongest in remembering the Vinaya. he went for Rajagaha. And then Venerable Ananda left with a company of other monks for the same destination, going on a kind of a Dhamma tour, going from town to town and teaching the Dhamma wherever he went. In particular, he was interested in consoling the people who were grieving after the Buddha's death. When he arrived at Savatthi, he went to the Buddha's fragrant cell. That would be the putti where the Buddha had stayed before. And Ananda did what he always used to do. He arranged the seats, he put it all in order and swept it out, just as he used to do when the Buddha was still alive. And then the next day, he wasn't feeling well. So he took some, he said, a purgative milk. So he took a medicine to throw up. He had a tummy ache. The commentary says, in the several months after the Buddha's passing, he had just stayed sitting in meditation. And then he went on his tudong with a lot of walking, and it was too much for him. So then on this day, a certain layman named Subha, the son of Todaya, heard that Ananda was there and sent a messenger to invite Ananda to come over for alms food. But Ananda turned down the invitation on account of illness, but offered to come the following day. And he did that the next day. He went with his attendant monk to the home of Subha. So who was Subha? His father was a Brahmin who had been a very wealthy merchant, and in addition to being a merchant, was a chaplain to the king, King Pasenadi. We know that the Brahmins were the priest caste that had a role of being around helping with the affairs of state, doing certain ceremonies that were related to the public events. So this Todaya, Subha's father, was a tremendous miser. As a result of that, afterwards he was born as a dog in the same household. So one day the Buddha was going on alms round, and he arrived at Subha's house. And when the dog saw the Buddha, he barked and barked. And the Buddha addressed the dog as Todaya. And then the dog got quiet and came in and lay down on a certain bed. Nobody could drive it away. And then Subha wanted to know what was going on. And the Buddha told the story, whereupon Subha became very angry, saying his father has to be born in the Brahmaloka realm, that's the Brahma heaven, because he was a Brahmin who was a chaplain. And in order to refute him and prove that Todaya had been reborn as a dog, he caused the dog to indicate the place where Todaya had secretly hidden all of his money. So that's one story. Then there's another story in there's another Subha Sutta in the Middle Length Discourses where Subha comes and he's sort of challenging the Buddha and claiming that the household lifestyle of the Brahmin class was better than the ascetic lifestyle. And the Buddha taught in that case, he taught about the practice of the Brahma Viharas or loving kindness. And then there's a third sutta where Subha came and the Buddha taught him about karma, about how beings are reborn according to their actions. The funny thing is, to me, is each time after hearing these teachings, Subha declared that he was converted and he bowed down and asked to take refuge and be considered as a lay follower for the rest of his life. And then at the next sutta, it seems like he's forgotten what he's done And he gets converted several times in several different sutras. So, but be that as it may, here he is. The Buddha's passed away, and Subha comes with a slight arrogance and introduce himself. I'm Subha the Brahmin. I'm the son of Todeya. And he says, Master Ananda, you are Master Gautama's attendant. You are close to him, living in his presence. You ought to know what things Master Gautama praised and in which he encouraged, settled, and grounded all these people. What were those things? And now here comes the lesson. Student, the Buddha praised 3 sets of things. That's what he encouraged, settled, and grounded all these people in. What 3? The entire aggregate of noble ethics, concentration or immersion, samadhi, and wisdom. These are the 3 sets of things that the Buddha praised. And then he goes straight away into the entire aggregate of ethics. I'm reading today from Bhikkhu Sujata's translation. What is the entire spectrum of noble ethics which the Buddha praised? Now, before reading further, I'm going to do a small sidetrack. This section, which we're going to look at first about ethics, is showing how the ethics culminate in the profound happiness of being free from guilt. And it's from, I could say, the balanced life or the happiness that arises from taming the negative impulses and being able to be stabilized in these noble virtues, that then one is capable of entering meditation and also capable of recognizing and realizing the wisdom of these teachings. I would refer you to a different sutta, which is in the Anguttara Nikaya, the numerical discourses. There it's number 10.2. And it gives a very wonderful summary of like what's the purpose of virtue? Okay. So for the virtuous, it says in the Anguttara Nikaya, for the virtuous, there arises freedom from guilty feelings. For the guilt-free, there arises joy. That's called pamuda. For the joyful, there arises a blissful mind. That's called the piti mana. For the blissful-minded person, there arises a calm body. That's called pasadakaya. For the calm-bodied person, there arises happiness, a sukha. For the happy person, there arises stillness or samadhi. Could be called stillness or immersion or concentration. For the stilled person, one who has samadhi, there arises the vision of true reality. That's yatha bhuta jnana dasana, seeing things how they really are. For the one who sees true reality, there arises disenchantment. That's nibbida, no longer being confused or entranced or tricked by the deceptive or false perceptions about things. And then for the disenchanted, there is the knowledge and vision of freedom. And that will be freedom from the taints, which we talked about a few weeks ago. So in this way, we can see that this is called character ethics in modern philosophy. The result of ethical behavior is at first becoming a person with a certain type of character, and then being a person with that kind of character creates the possibility for different psychological or mental afflictions to disappear and be eradicated, for wisdom to arise, and for the ultimate liberation to happen. So now I'm going to read the sutta, and I might just get through the part about the ethics today. Another sidebar. The ethics that Ananda is describing are the ethics of one who has left the household life and gone forth as a recluse. And it's a little bit interesting to me that he's speaking with a Subha, who's a lay student, who's not really anywhere close to giving up his householder life as a Brahmin and the son of a wealthy Brahmin. And even at the end of the sutta, Subha declares himself as a lay follower. He doesn't have the mind which is approaching renouncing the household life. And yet somehow it's fruitful for him to hear about the ethics, the full spectrum of ethics, including the ethics of those who leave the household life and go forth as an ascetic. My question to you as we go through this, I want you to be thinking, are there parts of this lifestyle that even as a householder, you would find it beneficial to adopt these into your householder life, to make your life more balanced, more restful, more calm, more bright, more free from affliction? And we know that even among those who may be in the room right now, or could be certainly among those who regularly visit the Dhammadharini, who are householders, many of them have made that determination to bring their life closer and closer to the ascetic life. It could be that if they have an extremely stressful and busy job, they give up their stressful and busy job and perhaps take some other job that's kind of like simple and much less stressful, or else they retire from working for money if they're able to do that. Go live someplace that's extremely inexpensive so they don't need to earn a lot of money. They may give away their television or cut off their subscription to Netflix or something. Cut off their entertainments. They may stop attending the casino and give up gambling. Even sometimes they get like a crew cut or shave their head, get a very short hair so they don't have to worry about hairstyles. They might decide to just wear extremely simple clothing so they don't have to worry about fashion. And so in these ways, even in the household life, there's ways to think of being simplified. And in that simplicity is, I'm going to say, finding the balanced life. And within this balanced life, the afflictions are not rising. Okay, so now I'm going to read a bit. Student, It's when a realized one, and if you're looking at the book, it's part of the beginning, the subhead about the ethics. You may have to go ahead a couple of pages. It's when a realized one arises in the world, perfected, a fully awakened Buddha, accomplished in knowledge and conduct, holy, knower of the world, supreme guide for those who wish to train, teacher of gods and humans, awakened and blessed. He has realized with his own insight this world with its gods, maras, and brahmas, this population with its ascetics and brahmins, gods and humans, and he makes it known to others. He teaches Dhamma, that's good in the beginning, good in the middle, and good in the end, meaningful and well phrased. And he reveals a spiritual practice that's entirely full and pure. A householder hears that teaching, or a householder's child, or someone reborn in a good family. They gain faith in the realized one and reflect. Living in a house is cramped and dirty, but the life of one gone forth is wide open. It's not easy for someone living at home to lead a spiritual life, utterly full and pure like a polished shell. Why don't I shave off my hair and beard, dress in ochre robes, and go forth from lay life to homelessness? And after some time, they give up their large or small fortune, their large or small family circle, shave their hair and beard, dress in the ochre robes, and go forth from lay life to homelessness. Once they've gone forth, they live restrained in the monastic code, conducting themselves well and seeking alms in suitable places. Seeing danger in the slightest fault, they keep the rules they've undertaken. They act skillfully by body and speech. They're purified in livelihood and accomplished in ethical conduct. They guard the sense doors, have mindfulness and clear comprehension, and they are content. I'm just checking now. Are you still with me on this? Shall I go ahead to the next section, or is there a question?
I can't hear you very well.
Can't hear very well? Okay. Well, I'm going to turn my body slightly, and so many complications. Okay, so you're seeing the side of my head, so I'm partly looking towards our visitors so that you can hear me. Is it better this way?
It's better this way, yeah.
Okay.
It's just whenever there's another. That's when it gets.
Yeah. The first section on ethics is the basic precepts. So if you just got one part of it down pat, it would be this part. Here's how a mendicant accomplished in ethics. Here, a mendicant gives up killing living creatures. They renounce the rod and the sword. They're scrupulous and kind, living full of compassion for all living beings. So if you have a sword or a weapon at home, I advise you to consider giving it up. They give up stealing. They take only what's given and expect only what's given. They keep themselves clean by not thieving. This pertains to their ethics. They give up unchastity. They are celibate, set apart, avoiding the vulgar act of sex. This pertains to their ethics. They give up lying. They speak the truth and stick to the truth. They're honest, trustworthy, and don't trick the world with their words. This pertains to their ethics. They give up divisive speech. They don't repeat in one place what they heard in another so as to divide people against each other. Instead, they reconcile those who are divided, supporting unity, delighting in harmony, loving harmony, speaking words that promote harmony. This pertains to their ethics. They give up harsh speech. They speak in a way that's mellow, pleasing to the ear, lovely, going to the heart, polite, likable, and agreeable to people. This pertains to their ethics. They give up talking nonsense. Their words are timely, true, and meaningful, in line with the teaching and training. They say things at the right time, which are valuable, reasonable, succinct, and beneficial. And this pertains to their ethics. So if there's nothing timely, true, meaningful, and significant to say, they may stay quiet. And then this last part, I'm going to call this the life of simplicity. They refrain from injuring plants and seeds. They eat in one part of the day, abstaining from eating at night or eating food at the wrong time. They avoid dancing, music, singing, seeing shows. They refrain from beautifying and adorning themselves with garlands, fragrance, and makeup. They avoid high and luxurious beds. They avoid receiving gold and money, raw grains, raw meat. So these are the things that can be received by a monastic. Classically, it's suitable to give a monastic a cloth to wear, the food to eat, the medicine for the relief of illness, or a shelter for protection from weather. It's not suitable to give them these other kinds of things which they would not be receiving. They're not receiving gold and money, not receiving uncooked food, uncooked meat, not receiving women and girls, male and female bond servants or slaves, goats and sheep, chicken and pigs, elephants, cows, horses, mares. In other words, all the domestic animals, they don't receive them. Fields and land. They refrain from running errands and messages, buying and selling, falsifying weights, metals, or measures, bribery, fraud, cheating, duplicity, mutilation, murder, abduction, banditry, plunder, and violence. This pertains to their ethics. So, as much as you can, for example, if a dog or a cat came to the monastery and was hanging around, and the monastic gave them some food or even took care of their injury or their illness, then that animal could voluntarily stay around the monastery, and that would be allowed. But keeping an animal against its will, like if it's in a cage or tied up on a chain or something, that animal is not free to go, that's considered sort of like slavery. And we're not keeping animals for that reason. And then, of course, slavery is illegal in the United States, but keeping somebody as a wage slave, such that somehow or other you've tricked them and they have to work for you and they're not able to leave, would also be definitely not allowed for us. And we hope as householders that you also would not do such a thing. So that's the first section on ethics. Do you see anything that pertains to the householder life? Damon is saying, doesn't see why a layperson can't become enlightened. Lay people can become enlightened. There are many, many lay people who have stream entry, which is the first stage of enlightenment, and who have the subsequent stages of being a non-returner or a once returner or a non-returner, which is the level where they wrong view, delusion, clinging, arises, those things drop away. Greed and aversion drop away. It is said that at the stage of being a full arahant, which is when the self-conceit drops away, and when any small delusion about the world drops away, that one would not remain alive as a layperson for very long if one were fully enlightened. You just wouldn't be able to go to work and punch the time clock and keep it up, and you definitely wouldn't be able to have sex with your spouse. Just you just couldn't. But it does happen in some of the ancient stories that lay people close to death, at the moments before death, sometimes they gain their full awakening. So now, Sharanya, you have a comment?
Well, I was just going to say that for a while I experimented with these things, like not adorning yourself, wearing simple clothes, not going to shows or not watching television. And it is very, very hard because there are conditions that don't support it. I think the world treats you very differently when you're not adorning yourself. But the good thing about experimenting with this is that once you have gone through a phase of kind of scaling back on it, and you try to go back to it, it doesn't appeal to you anymore. So for example, one of my great distractions was watching movies and TV shows. And now I just find the whole thing so incredibly silly and very unethical too, just in the messages that they convey.
Yeah.
So, but it's good. I guess I was just trying to say that this section is really hard, I think, for householders to try to follow.
Yeah. Thank you. Whatever part of this may be useful to integrate in your life, we do recommend trying that out. And as well, not to feel remorse if you are working a job and through ethical means earning a living and developing wealth that you're doing that's part of a balanced lifestyle. The Buddha is not condemning that, but then he's making this offer that if you would like to be enlightened, then you will find that the more simplicity and less involvement is what it supports moving in that direction. Ananea, you have a hand up.
Yes, and to Saranya's, I mean, it's great for someone who's much younger than I am to take those on. For myself, I mean, obviously, well, it's not obviously. I have friends who are my age and even older who are still thrilled with going shopping and having stuff, which is something that I just totally can't relate to, having put that aside for quite a few years now. But it definitely is something to contemplate and also and to experiment, as Sharanya was saying and did, to see what you can do. And over time, if I have found, as practice has developed, that it gets easier. It does get easier. Giving up clothes and not wearing clothes that are have color. I did, quite a few years ago. I mean, my closet is like most women would just not even fathom having such a small wardrobe, but it's really nice. I don't have to think about it. I mean, it's just not something. In short hair, all that stuff is just like, the layers just start dropping away at a point. But I will admit that I have not given up totally the watching certain things on Amazon or whatever, one of the streaming services. That's still something that I'm working with. So But I encourage it. And it's, you feel it as you go along. It's just something internally begins to shift, and it becomes easier, or they just drop away. You don't even have to think about it so much.
Thank you. Continuing on with the sutta, now comes the short section on ethics was giving the ethics in very short paragraphs. And then the middle section on ethics is going over the same information, but giving a little bit of a longer treatment. So in the middle section on ethics, there are some ascetics and Brahmins who, while enjoying food given in faith, still engage in injuring plants and seeds. And then it describes what kind of plants it means. Plants propagated from roots, stems, cuttings, or joints, those from regular seeds as the fifth. So that's the definition of a living plant to which monastics refrain from causing injury. And that pertains to their ethics. And then there are some ascetics who, while enjoying food given in faith, still engage in storing up goods for their own use, including such things as food, drink, clothes, vehicles, bedding, fragrance, and material possessions. They refrain from storing up such goods. This pertains to their ethics. We are, even being monastics in a monastery, we struggle with this because the American Western culture is so much oriented to the accumulation of things. And excuse me, but when you, our beautiful, beloved lay supporters, are tired of your things, but they're not bad enough to put in the trash, sometimes you come and give them to the monastery. and it can have a real danger. It takes a lot of willpower and discernment for monastics to just let in the things that are actually immediately useful, and to realize that these things sort of come and go. None of them are our personal property. They're just things that have been left that may be used as part of the function of the monastery for both the monastics and our supporters. And then in storing up the food, we have you might think that you don't want to bother coming to the monastery to give something to the monastic every day. So why don't you just bring them 50 pounds of rice and many large boxes of maybe 50 pounds of beans and a whole lot of spices, and just say, well, let them cook. But we're not living like that. We're not in that state. Like we've got this, it's like the wealth. We have our wealth all piled up in the bank, so we don't have to worry because we know that there's going to be something for us tomorrow. Actually, if we didn't have a layperson who, or at a minimum, a novice who was able to take the food given by a layperson and offer it, then we'd have to take our alms bowl and go out by the corner and see if somebody would give something. So we are supposed to have this attitude that every day, like, is the universe going to provide for us today or not? And if it does, good. And if it doesn't, that means we have more time for meditation. So that's also good. But it would be quite corrupt if a Buddhist monastic was accepting the alms food that you give in faith every day and still having a hoard of wealth that they've piled up back in the closet. That wouldn't be pleasing to you, and it's not what the Buddha has set out the way we should live. There are some ascetics and Brahmins who, while enjoying foods given in faith, these would be ascetics outside of the Buddhist group. Enjoying food given in faith, they still engage in seeing shows. And this is saying, what kind of shows should we not see? Okay, dancing, singing, music, performance, and storytelling, clapping, gongs, kettle drums, beauty pageants, tribal bone washing ceremonies, a battle of elephants, horses, buffaloes, bulls, goats, rams, chickens, and quails, staff fighting, boxing and wrestling, combat, roll calls of the armed forces, battle formations, and regimental reviews. These are the shows that monastics should not engage in seeing. There are some ascetics and Brahmins who, while enjoying the food given in faith, still engage in gambling that causes negligence. And in case you don't know what gambling is, this includes such thing as checkers, 8-row checkers, 10-row checkers, checkers in the air, hopscotch, spillikins, board games, tip-cat, drawing straws, dice, leaf flutes, toy plows, somersaults, pinwheels, toy measures, toy carts, toy bows, guessing words from syllables, guessing on others' thoughts, and imitating musical instruments. I think this includes both the kind of games that children play, as well as gambling games. So all of those are given up by the monastics. There are some ascetics and Brahmins who enjoy the food given in faith, but still use high and luxurious bedding. That would include sofas, couches, woolen covers, shag-piled, colorful, white, embroidered with flowers, quilted, embroidered with animals, double-fringed, single-fringed silk covers studded with gems, silken sheets, woven carpets, rugs for elephants, horses, or chariots, antelope hide rugs, spreads of fine deer hide with a canopy above, and red cushions at both ends. They refrain from such bedding. This pertains to their ethics. There are some ascetics and Brahmins who, while enjoying food given in faith, still engage in beautifying and adorning themselves with garlands, fragrance, and makeup. This includes such things as applying beauty products by anointing, massaging, bathing, and rubbing, mirrors, ointments, garlands, fragrance, makeup, face powder, foundation, bracelets, headbands, fancy walking sticks, or containers, rapiers, parasols, fancy sandals, turbans, jewelry, chowries, and long-fringed white robes. They refrain from such beautification and adornment. So, you know, it is a quality of the human being that when undertaking a precept, where does your morality come from? It comes from the right intention, the intention of non-cruelty, the intention of kindness or non-greed, generosity or non-greed, kindness or non-cruelty, and non-harming. So that's like the broad intention. But then when you come to a specific item, you might come to, somebody has offered the monastery a high bed with pillows on both sides and fringes and jewels and all of those things. And so then you might think, well, what's the harm in that? And so it would take a lot of brain power as you go through life, case by case by case, being able to really have the clarity to always be able to recognize what's the harm in that. Is this going to hurt me or not? So after reflecting pondering and perhaps having experiences and reflecting on the experiences, then you come to the shortcuts, which are your rules. And so then if you said that I'm recognizing that all of these kinds of luxurious pleasures can stimulate a kind of sensual pleasure that subsequently has a rebound effect that causes the hedonic treadmill of being pleasured and then being bored and then wanting more pleasure to overcome the boredom, or the being pleasured and then having a hangover afterwards and wanting some pleasure to overcome the hangover. That you recognize the harm in it, and then make the rule. But then it nevertheless is something that's actually representative of people with mature ethics, that they may have a lot of very specific ideas about where they draw the line. So somebody could say they, as a layperson, that you are willing to watch a movie, but you would not watch a violent movie, or something like that, that you have someplace that's quite clear that you've made a rule for yourself about where you draw the line. So for the monastics, all of these like definitions of what's makeup. So using an unscented moisturizing lotion for the health of the skin is okay, but using makeup not okay. So this is the kind of reason for this clarity, even though it seems it's silly in one way, and then in another way it gives a wonderful portrait, doesn't it, of what the life was like in ancient India. That the children had all these different games that they had, and all the different kinds of luxury that they had. But these things are what we don't participate in. And then we come to the what's called low talk. Some ascetics and Brahmins engage in low talk. They don't talk about kings, bandits, and ministers, armies, threats, and wars, food, drink, and clothes, and beds. Talk about garlands and fragrances. Talk about family, vehicles, villages, towns, cities, and countries. Talk about women and heroes. Street talk. Talk of the well. That means gossip. Or like talk about celebrities. Talk about the departed. Motley talk, tales of land and sea. Talk about being reborn into this or that state of existence. They refrain from such low talk. And I hope that you notice, those who have been my student for some time, even though, like you could say in this time that armies and war and politics has so much invaded the world that everybody has got those things in mind. But you wouldn't be able to have a discussion here about politics with me because I've drawn the line in accordance with the Buddha's recommendation. My politics is that I recommend, I've undertaken not killing, and I recommend not killing. And I would, if I had to vote, I would, or if you asked me about voting, I would suggest try to vote for the person who's for non-killing. Try to vote for the person who's for non-lying. Try to vote for the person who's not engaged in sexual misconduct and doesn't support sexual misconduct. And so that's as far as I'll go with politics. And in that way, our mental world is like we're swimming in the mental world of the Dhamma taught by the Blessed One. So our thought world has got those elements, and those elements can be dominating. All of these other topics can have a tendency to distract the mind from our constant awareness. I'm going to go a couple more paragraphs and then we'll pause for conversation. Okay, some who, while enjoying food given in faith, still engage in arguments. They say such things as, "You don't understand this teaching and training. I understand this teaching and training." What? You understand this teaching and training? You are practicing wrong. I'm practicing right. I stay on topic. You don't. You said last what you should have said first. You said first what you should have said last. What you've gone through so much, what you thought so much about has been disproved. Your doctrine is refuted. Go on, save your doctrine. You're trapped. Get yourself out of this if you can. So that kind of argumentative talk is abandoned by those who are following the Buddhist path as a ascetic or a monastic. There are some ascetics and Brahmins who, while enjoying food given in faith, still engage in running errands and messages. Can't you see how tempting that would be for a monastic? Like everyone in the village visits the monastery and has a chance to talk to the bhikkhu or the bhikkhuni. And so if a woman wants to send a message to a man, or a man wants to send a message to a woman, they could ask the bhikkhu or the bhikkhuni to carry that message and think that they would be able to get away with it. But we don't involve in carrying messages that way. We don't run errands for rulers, ministers, aristocrats, Brahmins, householders, or princes who say, go here, go there, take this, bring that from there. We refrain from doing those kind of errands. And then the last of all in this section, some who, while enjoying food given in faith, still engage in deceit, flattery, hinting, and belittling, and using material possessions to chase after other material possessions. That would mean, like in giving gifts, if you want somebody to give you an expensive gift, if you give them a nice gift, then in reciprocation, they have to give you something nice. Or else, if there's somebody who comes to the temple who's a very wealthy person, and then if we like praise like what a great student they are, how much how virtuous they seem to be, how well they understand the Dhamma, and if we were doing that with this dirty thought in our mind, saying maybe if we're nice to them, they'll make a nice gift to the monastery, that would be a real corruption for the monastic, what we should not do. And you should feel safe and comfortable with the monastics, knowing that we don't behave like that. We don't get involved with hinting or, having our hand out or saying, if you take this course, you can take a course with us and it will cost you so much to take the course. And then if you do well, you could get a stream entry and we could give you a certificate of your stream entry after you've given us this many, hundreds of thousands or whatever, something like that. That's corruption. We don't do that. The Buddha doesn't allow us to do that. So now I finished this section of ethics, and I would like to ask any questions you have, either parts of it that you think are adaptable for you, or questions you have about how the monastics should behave. I'll call on Damon.
Yeah, but before I ask a question, I would like you to we've been at this for almost an hour. Could you kind of summarize what we've gone over so far to kind of, give us a framework for our questions?
Yes. Well, in the first section where we talked about the 5 precepts, and then about simplicity by giving up certain kind of like distractions, That's the basic framework of virtue. And then this subsequent section is showing how that framework can be developed out in more detail. And then at the very top, I was suggesting to think, does observing this precept make my life calmer, more free, more balanced and stabilized? Does it help me to get away of certain kinds of, we could say, emotional roller coasters? And does it help to conserve my energy so that I'm filled with energy for the things that I choose to do, because I've not frittered away my energy on things that are only distractions? So that's my suggestion so far about how you may look at these things.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, Richard.
Yes, thank you. I have a certain view of sila, which is in Pali, the word actually basic meaning is habit. So you'll find in the suttas, susila, dusila. Susila means good habit, dusila means bad habit. And I think the reason that the Buddha used the word habit is because he wants this wholesome state of mind to become your automatic habitual habit, so that you don't even go to the unwholesome. But anyways, that's just, the way I feel about it. But others may have a different opinion. But anyways, I just wanted to make that point. Thank you.
Thank you. And we know that your dentist might tell the patient, if the patient doesn't have good habits in taking care of the teeth, to just make a strong effort to brush your teeth after every meal for 1 month. And after you've done it for 1 month, then you already have the beginning of a habit, and it becomes easier and easier to continue doing it. It only takes a minor amount of effort to continue keeping that habit supported. And so the habit could be reflected in 2 ways. One is positively for the things that we do, and the other one is negative for the things that we avoid. So when we have decided to avoid certain things that are not beneficial, that might be harmful to us or to others, I'm not sure if maybe this has ever happened to you, possibly when you were a kid. You did something bad, sort of like to see if you could get away with it. And then after doing that bad thing, the sky didn't fall, you didn't get caught, you didn't get scolded, you didn't immediately feel the repercussion like that. And then just at that point where you've picked up something that could be a harmful habit is a point of tremendous danger, actually, because if you got away with it once, then you think maybe tomorrow you can get away with it again. And then after you've done the same foolish thing 5 times, then you can see that the mind has already started to become sort of like a corrupted or low in some kind of way. And that's going on the way towards developing a bad character. And then a bad character is somebody who's inclined to fall into different kinds of distress and upset, anger, conflicts, et cetera, and to go further and further into the roller coaster of adventures in the world of evil. And so it goes both ways with habits. Travis has a hand up.
Yeah, so I was just curious. You were talking earlier about about giving up weapons. Now, I was going to ask, does Theravada Buddhism have an idea of defending oneself? For example, like, global catastrophes, like, I don't know, like Nazi Germany. Like, obviously, you would need some form of weapons to protect yourself, or to free people.
If one would, wars were known of in the Buddha's time. And there's very few suttas that are speaking directly about this, but there are two. One was someone who was a professional warrior who had heard that if someone is a professional warrior and they go to battle in a just cause and with their mind filled with the idea of upholding the ethics of a warrior and killing the enemy in a conscientious way with that warrior ethic, that then they would go to a warrior heaven, a special heaven designed for patriotic warriors. And the Buddha said, sorry, it's a special hell that's reserved for those who are engaged in killing, even if they're doing it for a patriotic reason or for some kind of a justice type of a reason. And then on another occasion, the two kingdoms were at war over the rights to the water in the river. And the Buddha did something that he did very rarely. He made a magical apparition and caused himself to appear floating in the sky above where the two armies were. And on both sides, both of those countries were Buddhist countries. So all of the soldiers and the kings and all of them were Buddhist. And they're just in the process of killing each other. And then they look up and they see this great apparition of the Buddha floating in the sky. And immediately all of them feel so like ashamed of themselves. And they kind of put down their weapons down and then stop. And then the Buddha preached to them and said, what's more valuable? The blood of these living persons that you're getting ready to kill, or the water in the river. So the Buddha knows that war happens, but if you want to become free from suffering, the Buddha advises not to go to war and not to kill. And if you did go to war and you did kill, then this would have caused like a powerful negative habit to be planted in the mind that has the potential to cause subsequent bad patterns in your life. It's like it becomes a traumatic psychological injury that can be harmful for a long time afterwards. And so the Buddha was interested in the healing and reparation and reconciliation from those people who had killed in the past. And he advised them to give up killing, to put down the sword, put down the weapon, and make the determination not to kill again. And then when they do that, they can give up the thought that they're going to have to go to hell and be punished. And so the purpose of this idea of karmic retribution is not that because of something that happened in the past, you're doomed. And so you might as well go on repeating the bad thing because you're a bad person who's doomed to keep going on repeating that bad habit. The Buddha taught it's possible to stop, possible to change, possible to give up, to turn on a dime. And even at that point, it's possible to gain the highest. Damon.
Oh, these are very tough topics. I thank you for having the courage to take them on. If you prefer to move on from this after my question, that's fine. This morning I sat on Zoom with a group led by Taigen Dan Layton, who's a very well-respected Buddhist scholar and the guiding teacher of a group in Chicago called Ancient Dragon Zen. And he noted that the passing of Daniel Ellsberg today and lauded him or celebrated him for what he said was his courageous act of doing something to leak out something from the government about atrocities during war. And I felt very torn, and so I would put it to you, that a very well-respected Buddhist scholar and leader chose to sort of dip his toe in something that is somewhat controversial, involves war. What do you make of it?
Without speaking directly to that question, I would say that as a monastic, we have a very extended set of precepts that is handed down to us by our tradition. And in a way, it's a cage, and in another way, it's very comfortable to be within a cage because there's a certain, it's a cage of support. So that's good. We know that there's a lot that the Buddha taught about the essence of virtue, the essence of goodness, which is not, they cannot be captured by any number of rules. So what's moral or virtuous under this having the mind of non-harming in a way transcends all the specific rules. And then in another way, there are occasions where a violation of a rule could be the ethical thing to do. So we have a rule about not teaching the Dhamma to somebody who is in a disrespectful posture. So if they are wearing shoes, are wearing hats, are lying in bed, we're not supposed to teach them the Dhamma, because this is a rule that's related to respect. And nevertheless, I give Dhamma talks in Zoom that are going onto YouTube, and I have no idea what posture they're going to be in when they listen to that talk. They could be naked and listening to a Dhamma talk, but it would be really like a lack of a failure of compassion on my part if I say I'm only willing to give a Dhamma talk in person to somebody who's in front of me, so I can make sure that they're in a respectful deportment. So that's an example where,
Jessica, to get a summary.
because of our time, and there's a loophole in the rule for health. So if you'll become ill from wearing your hat, okay. Ananda.
Yes, I just wanted to just briefly say that I would encourage Damon perhaps to look at the actual Pentagon, what actually happened then. And it wasn't about atrocities. He exposed the government's decision-making process and falsehoods that arose from that process that created the situation that became Vietnam and all the horrors that subsequently happened after that. But it was not, his part was as a whistleblower. He exposed how things were done. So in that's a completely different thing than just focusing on the atrocities that subsequently came from that.
But persons who are in the world will need to have the courage to discover what is the higher value, which is the true path of virtue, and to pursue this, even if it might be breaking somebody's rules and regulations. Sheila.
And I just wanted to add, thank you, Aya, that while we've been discussing this long discourse, Subha Sutta, excuse me, the thing that's been on my mind has been the Eightfold Path, and in the discussion around, say, whistleblowers or this ethical, what do I do in a particular situation? Do I stick to exactly what the rule is, despite a cause and condition that could be worse? I think of right livelihood and the where that would lie in terms of making decisions that could be around, for instance, decisions that come up and arise in our work.
Thank you. As we approach the end of our time, I'm going to wrap up this section on morality. And then next week, we're going to do the rest of the sutta, which will address setting up the factors for meditation, abandoning the hindrances, and then subsequently the section about wisdom. What I especially would like to invite, this is a kind of an experiment. Someone asked about sloth and torpor or sleepiness in meditation. And I'm going to put out this possibility that having good clarity with your ethics and simplicity in life is creating the circumstance where the mind could be free from all the hindrances, especially from greed, especially from anger, especially from restlessness and remorse, especially from sleepiness, and especially from doubt. So if you don't know what your values are, you'll have a lot of doubts. If somebody is filled with either whether it be remorse or whether it be anger or whether it be greed, those states are really exhausting. And I know when I first encountered Buddhism, I was really sleepy. I couldn't even stay awake for one Dhamma talk. And the monk was so polite and kind. I apologized for sleeping through all his talks. And he said, there's something in your life that's really exhausting right now. And so I'm suggesting look at how your virtue is having an impact on what happens when you sit down for meditation. And then we'll talk further about that next time. Okay, I'll take Susan's comment.
Well, thank you, Aya. This is such a deep dive. Thank you into Sila. I wondered, it occurred to me about conditioning. And could I look at this like almost like I'm reconditioning myself, because we will be conditioned until we're enlightened. I'm guessing they were always being conditioned. Even there's a conditioning going on until we're free. And
Yes.
so, yes. And so I feel in the transcendental dependent origination, like you mentioned, is it's like it automatically starts spilling over into those, renunciation and detachment. And anyway, I think that's a new conditioning happening. I could look at it. Yes, it is. It's all, you're either in the conditioning of the suffering or of the dependent origination, or you're in the conditioning of toward freedom in the steps. In
Yes.
a way, is that
Yes.
okay?
You've got it.
Yeah.
So you can choose. You might not be able to choose, I'm going to be enlightened, and say, I'm going to hold my breath until I'm enlightened. Maybe you can't do that, not yet. But you could create the conditions. You can choose the conditions. You can invest your
Yeah.
energy into
Stila.
developing those conditions, starting with the sila, that then subsequently matures into the rest of the path. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, Travis, and then Maureen, and then we're gonna stop. So next, Travis.
Yeah, no, I was just curious, when will you guys be doing precepts next? I'd be interested in taking precepts.
That's a good question. I can give precepts anytime. But when our next big ceremony is going to be on the weekend of July 29 and 30, when we're having Dhamma Day for the entering. So we'll be definitely having a big precept ceremony then. But if you send us an yeah, well, I'm kind of respecting the time of the people, but we can send me an email, and we'll decide about. Okay, who wants to take precepts right now? Since we're on it, we can. 5 precepts. Okay, here comes 5 precepts. And then while I'm pulling up the 5 precepts, Maureen, do you have a comment?
You're muted, Maureen.
There, when dana is given and the lay person has, say, killed the ants in the food pantry or done something cool to keep the mice out and that kind of thing, or like cotton robes, they may have been grown with very harshly treated laborers. Where does that, there's a line there between the monastics benefited from the dana, but they haven't got the guilt of how they've dealt with the problems, say with the pests and exploitation, that sort of thing. Anyway.
So the those who were in the tradition of the Jains had the idea that the karma was determined by the act. And so they got into a kind of a never-ending and endless drive towards perfection of never having any act that remotely could result in a harm to life. And the Buddha emphasized that the harm is not coming from the act, but coming from the intention. And in fact, it's almost as if he acknowledged that, like, if you receive something from somebody and they were so many other people involved before that, that the process of life in samsara includes killing, and it includes a lot of other unwholesome things. And so we're not, we're still sort of like touched by clothing, shelters, and foods that at some level back in causation we're connected to killing. So knowing that, like having the compassion to know that this is this world. When we got a human birth, we're in a world that includes all this killing. And then making the effort, it's like with humility, making the effort to purify our intentions and to really, devote the mind towards the welfare and happiness of beings, and towards not intentionally acquiescing to the harm of beings. But you can't, like at the materialistic level, you can't come away from being within 5 degrees of separation from something that somebody did that was causing some harm to some being. I'm just trying to pull up the slideshow of the 5 precepts. So those who wish to have precepts can just stay on, and it should be, it should come up very quickly because it's a Google slideshow. And now my computer is frozen. I don't know if my Zoom is going to go away. The computer has become extremely slow. Yeah.
There was another part to my question.
Okay.
Um,
Go ahead.
Yeah. If you're bringing up children and you're caring for somebody and you have to do things that have to keep them alive, like killing the mice or the rats or whatever, the mosquitoes, but the balance of doing this and keeping that child alive, that there are those sorts of quandaries as well.
Right.
I
Do
can't.
your best. Do your best. Do the best you can every time, knowing that at some level or another, that some unskillful thing may come along. And if we do something unskillful, then make the adhitthana not to repeat it. It could, like, in theory, it's possible. We had mice here at the monastery, and we had help from somebody who knew how to do it, and they like totally sealed up all of the crevices and cracks in our entire monastery. And then they put certain like one-way doors in a few places. And what the gentleman informed us is that mice naturally go outside every day to look for something to eat. And then they come back inside to come into their nest. So if you give them the one-way door so that they can go out, and then they're not able to come back. And in that way, without directly killing anybody, I didn't know that. I just learned it. And so, but then if there's an infestation of rodents in the house, it depends, like what you can afford to do, what you're able to manage, what all the circumstances are. But we make the effort to try to find a way which is compassionate and does not include killing. When I I've given precepts, requesting the three, okay, here we go. Requesting, there it came back. Requesting the 3 refuges and the 5 or 8 precepts. So I'm opening a slideshow if the computer would cooperate. It's gotten very slow. It's like the internet has gotten so mindful that they're doing everything very slowly. Loading, 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 loading. Mindfully loading. Okay. Now I'm going to share a screen. So those who would like can request 5 precepts and the 3 refuges. And I don't have somebody trained to read it out, so we can do it. I'll give it in call and response. So you can just repeat after me. I'm going to give the call and response, the request, as well as the refuges and precepts that way. Okay, here we go. So requesting the 5 precepts, please look at the Buddha that you have in the room, or else the little Buddha that you can see in the computer, and bow 3 times to the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. And repeat after me. Mayang aye tisaranena saha pancha silani yachama dutiyampi mayang aye tisaranena saha pancha silani yachama tatiyampi mayang aye tisaranena saha panchasilani yachama. So you requested the 3 refuges and the 5 precepts. I read off the 3 lines and then you repeat. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Reciting all together in English. Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one. Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one. Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one. Repeating line by line. Buddhang saranang gacchami. Dhammang saranang gacchami. Sanghang saranang gacchami. To the Buddha I go for refuge. To the Dhamma I go for refuge. To the Sangha I go for refuge. Dutiyampi Buddhang saranang gacchami. Dutiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami. Dutiyampi sangham saranang gacchami. For the second time to the Buddha, I go for refuge. For the second time to the Dhamma, I go for refuge. For the second time to the Sangha, I go for refuge. Tatiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi sangham saranang gacchami. For the third time to the Buddha, I go for refuge. For the third time to the Dhamma, I go for refuge. For the third time to the Sangha, I go for refuge. Tisarana Gamana Nititam, this completes the going for the 3 refuges. Now the precepts. Panatipata Veramani Sikka Padang Samadhiyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from taking the life of any living creature. Adinadana Veramani Sikka Padang Samadhiyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from taking that which is not given. Kame sumikchachara veramani sikka padang samadhiyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from sexual misconduct. Musavada veramani sikka padang samadhiyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from lying. Sura meraya manjapamadhatana veramani sikka padang samadhiyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from consuming intoxicating drink and drugs which lead to carelessness. Now my blessing. Imani panchasika padani, these are the 5 precepts. Silena sugatim yanti, silena bhoga sampada, silena nimbutim yanti, tasma silang visodhaye. Virtue is the source of happiness. Virtue is the source of true wealth. Virtue is the source of peacefulness. Therefore, let virtue be purified. And altogether, sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Again, bowing to the triple gem. Thank you, everybody, for your participation, your practice, and for the sincerity and courage of your questions. I will hope to see you next week when we can continue with this sutta through the stages of meditation and wisdom.
Thank you, Venerable.
Thank you, Aya.
Thank you, Aya.
Thank you so much. Have a good week, everyone.